Hi guys, my name is Baixu. I'm a licensed architect in both the UK and Germany. In this video, I'll share with you the steps I took to get qualified and licensed. Hopefully, it will help you on your journey if you're hoping to become an architect yourself, or if you're even mildly curious about the profession and what it takes. Spoiler alert, it takes a very, very long time. So how long did it take me? 9 years. 9 years. Of course, in these 9 years, I was not just studying. I was also working, traveling the world, having a very good time, but it was a lot of studying. So, in the UK, how is it done? Well, to summarize, there are 3 parts that you have to complete in order to become an architect. We can call it Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3. Part 1 is your bachelor's degree, Part 2 is your master's degree, Part 3 is your professional qualification. So, what exactly did I do? I started by studying architecture for 4 years at University of Bath. Normally, undergraduate degrees are 3 years long, but the course I had enrolled in was a sandwich course. In the sandwich course, you have periods of study interlaced with periods of internship or exchange programs, and in theory, it should give you a much richer and diverse education because you're drawing information from lots of different sources, from work placements or from studying at other great universities. So here is the exact breakdown that I did whilst I was at University of Bath. For the first year and a half, it was full-time studying. That was followed by a 6-month internship at a practice in Beijing. It was a UK office, but they only had an opportunity for me in the Beijing branch. I thought, well, I've never worked in Beijing before, but I can speak Chinese, so why not give it a try? And it turned out to be a really, really cool experience. After my 6-month internship in Beijing, I went back to the university and I did another 6 months of full-time studying. And after this, I went to Amsterdam and I did a 6-month internship with a very, very cool, fun Dutch firm. After this half year of internship in the beautiful city of Amsterdam, I went back to the UK and I finished my final year of full-time studying where I worked on some group projects and my graduation thesis design project. After 4 years, I was able to graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree in architecture. After graduation, I took some time out to relax and to travel. Then I put together my portfolio, applied to some master's programs for architecture, got my applications in and used a similar portfolio to apply for jobs. At that age, as a very young graduate, the only place I wanted to work in the UK was London. So I focused my efforts on finding a job in London as an architectural assistant, and eventually I did. I worked for a very nice commercial office in the centre of London near King's Cross for about 9 months before I started my postgraduate degree. So now we go on to part 2. So for this phase of my studies, I applied to a lot of different universities all around Europe just to broaden my chances of getting in somewhere. I was very fortunate that I managed to get an offer to the University of Cambridge to study architecture and urban design. So I seized that opportunity and went there for 2 years. Normally the master's programs in the UK are only 1 year long, but for architecture for some reason they are all 2-year programs. So the master's in Cambridge also turned out to be 2 years. But this program was pretty interesting in that it had a 9-month fieldwork period. So what do you do on this 9-month period of fieldwork? This is a 9-month period where you have the complete freedom to go off and explore much deeper into your chosen research topic that you're pursuing in your degree. My research topic was related to housing design in the city of Beijing. So of course, eventually I went to Beijing. But first, I went back for 1 month to my old office in London to get some money saved up. And during this time, I got in touch with an architecture professor in Tsinghua University, and I volunteered to do some work for him for a month and also ask him and his other staff some questions I had that could help with my project. I also applied to the summer course that was held by LSE about urbanization in Asia. The exact name is called The Political Economy of Urbanization in China and Asia, Globalization and Uneven Development. It was taught in the beautiful campus of Beijing University. After the summer program concluded, I then flew to the very cute city of Delft. I went there because the university has a really good reputation for architecture. TU Delft was actually a choice I had also considered doing for my master's degree, and eventually I chose Cambridge over Delft. So by doing an Erasmus exchange there, it was a great opportunity for me to experience the student life I didn't have. So after I completed my Erasmus exchange, I flew back to Cambridge. Finalized on some of my essay submissions, my graduation thesis, my research topic, my design portfolio, and thankfully graduated. And in 2017, I attended a graduation ceremony where I was officially awarded the Masters of Philosophy degree in Architecture and Urban Design. And that concludes my part 2. After graduation, once again, I took some time to travel and to recuperate some energy for my working career. I prepared my portfolio, sent my CVs off to a lot of offices in London. I had a couple of offers, but in the end, I decided to go to a fairly new, small, very young design firm in East London. In hindsight, it was a great choice because they were really creative and worked on super small, bespoke, beautiful projects, and I learned so much from my time there. So after my master's, my job title was officially architectural assistant. This is because the title architect is protected and you're only legally allowed to use it when you finished your studies, passed some exams, done all the paperwork that shows you have the relevant experience, get onto the architect's register, and only then are you allowed to call yourself an architect. Now, in order to apply and get accepted onto the register, you can't just have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. You also have to complete something called the Part 3. So let's talk about Part 3, everyone's favorite part of their architecture career. Yeah, I was being sarcastic. So this part is where you have to basically work full-time and study part-time. It's the last stage of the formal education. It focuses on the legal, procedural, professional, and managerial competencies needed to engage in the architecture profession. Maybe one day you'll be able to run your own projects or your own office. Things you don't get taught at university, but it's very important. You don't focus on the topics of design, you focus more on topics of problem solving and how to manage a project and how to get planning permission and how to bill clients. And on this Part 3 program, you also get assessed on your practical experience in the project. Ideally, you should have experience through all stages of the project, from concept to construction. So for my Part 3, I enrolled at the Bartlett UCL. Normally, the Part 3 programs last between 12 months to 24 months. The year that I applied was the year that the Bartlett was piloting a new program where they tried to shorten the Part 3. So the new one they were offering was 7 months long. And I wanted to get my Part 3 done as quickly as possible. And the course director there also had a look at my application and then said that I was probably quite a good candidate for this new pilot program. So that's what I did. It was freaking tough because during this period you're doing a full-time job, potentially with a lot of overtime. In the evenings you're attending lectures, sometimes lasting 3 hours long from 6 to 9 p.m. There was also a lot of coursework you had to complete in order to keep up with the studies and to prepare for the exams. You also had to do a lot of paperwork, these records called PEDRs that details exactly what you did on every single project for at least 24 months of work experience, because this is the minimum you need to pass Part 3. I had no fun for 7 months. It was so intense. So at the end of the 7 months, I sat the exams. I went to an interview where I was asked a lot of theoretical questions about what to do in certain situations on a project. I don't know how I did it, but I passed. And that took me to the end of my formal education journey. So with my undergraduate degree certificate, my master's degree certificate, and my Part 3 certificate, I was able to send that to the ARB, got accepted, and finally was on the register and officially became an architect. And this is the story of how I became licensed in the UK. Now, how did I do it in Germany? Well, I moved to Germany before Brexit happened, and whilst the UK was still in the EU, the Bavarian Chamber of Architects still recognized my certificate of registration from the ARB. I needed to get all the paperwork and get them translated into German, submitted to the Chamber of Architects, and after some waiting and some assessment, they also gave me my license. Unfortunately, if you want to convert your license into any other European countries now, it's not as straightforward because Britain is outside the EU, so they won't automatically recognize your certificates. So in conclusion, the journey to becoming an architect is very long, can be quite tiring, but it can also be so fun and exciting because you have so many opportunities to study in any institutions around the world and go work in some amazingly creative offices. You can work on projects as small as furniture design or a small shop, to skyscrapers, to urban planning. It's all possible. It's certainly not a short path. The minimum amount of time it takes is 7 years, but it can also be really, really rewarding if you are super into it. Now that I have been through the process myself, I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities, but there's also a lot of downsides. I will cover the pros and cons in a subsequent video because I think there's a lot of detail to go through in that. So if you're interested, subscribe and watch out for the next video.